Got a couple people still rolling in. Welcome to our webinar. So Jerry's going to be hosting a series all around CDPs. This is the kickoff of it. My name is Sammy Anderson. I'm our marketing manager here at Softcrylic. I probably have met some of you or you've seen emails from me throughout. If you have any questions, comments, concerns throughout, feel free to put it in the chat or in the Q&A. If you want further assistance with Softcrylic, info at Softcrylic is how you get a hold of us. But like I said, this is part one of a multi-part series going through the process of implementing a CDP. So starting from the beginning, so how do you select an RFP? How do you figure out what's going to be the right move for your company? Jerry's a pro, so he's going to give you his insider track on how he guides our clients. And with that, I'll pass it off to Jerry. Enjoy.
Thank you, Sammy. Welcome, everyone. I cannot see who's here, but I'm hoping whether you're watching this live or recording, that you will get something out of this first part of this webinar, or webinar series. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do things a little bit different through this series. I'm going to walk you initially through the different sessions that we're going to have. This is going to happen over the next few weeks or months. We're going to have different guests coming in, some clients who have a good story or a bad story to tell, but also we might bring in some of the vendors in the CDP space. So this way you're getting the best, I would say, experience knowing what it is like to select a CDP or implement a CDP or get value out of CDP. So that being said, let me just highlight what's going to be the main webinars to come. So today we're doing part one, and in today we're going to talk about the RFP process and selection. RFP might be scary for people, where it's like, oh my God, it's a long process, gotta do a write-up. I agree, but it's also, nothing is worse than selecting the wrong CDP and investing all that money, and just a couple of years down the road, you're like, I wasted time, did not get what I want, and we redo it again. So I fully encourage the RFP process. We've been lucky that we've been able to do a bunch of these RFPs with different clients. So I'll walk you through in today's session on what that process looks like and what are the things to pay attention to. Then the second and part two, which will be actually next week, same time, same day, but next week, we're going to concentrate on how to assess the need for a CDP. And this might sound silly, but in reality, a lot of clients and companies today say we need a CDP for the wrong reason. It might be a buzzword. It's still a buzzword. I don't know how it is still, but it is still a buzzword so many years after it surfaced. But in some cases, some of the clients already have a CDP operating within the organization, and the need for a brand new off-the-shelf CDP might not always be the best idea. So we're going to talk through on how do you assess whether you need a CDP and what kind of CDP you need. Obviously, there are different types of CDPs. So that's in part two. And then in part three, we will talk about the CDP implementation. So you selected the CDP, you selected the vendor, you selected solution integrator, and then you go ahead and implement it. It's a process. It's a process that can get messy with like any other implementation, but what to expect? Who are the folks that you should have within your organization available to support such a big project? So we'll talk through that, and we'll have some folks who've done this that can speak on their experience. And then in part four of this webinar series, we'll talk about post-implementation. And this is where you have implemented the CDP, and now you want to run and operate. How do you get value out of it? Surprisingly, again, there's a gap that we've been seeing between implementation and leveraging and using the CDP. Actually, a lot of our recent engagements has been coming in post-implementation, helping clients in getting value out of the CDP. So that could be a surprise for some based on budgets or expectations. So it will be good for you to see what would that phase look like. And then I'm planning on doing on part 5, and this will be a bonus. I think bonus meaning I don't know exactly what I'm going to talk about then, but it will be good because it might be a panel where, given that we've gone through all these parts, and we talked about the A to Z on how to select and assess the need and implement it and run it, what could be some interesting things to consider. So that will be mostly like a panel that will bring in folks, and we can get questions from you and do our best to address them. Okay, so that's the plan for the next few webinars in that series. So today we are going to concentrate on the RFP process and selection. So let's talk about that. So RFP. If we were to simplify the process for an RFP, there will be what? There will be like a document that highlights, for example, use case, highlights schedule. And so there will be like a document associated with it. Obviously, there's more to that. But then also you will have a questionnaire that would highlight what are the questions that will include security and IT requirements, fun stuff. But then with those, and then you get answers, and then you get demos, and then you get a CDP, right? That's what the general feel for an RFP, right? We need to write a document, we need to get the questionnaire, we need to send it out, get answers, we'll do some demos, and then, hey, we have a winner. And in reality, it's a lot more than that, because to write the document itself requires you to start with, okay, why? What are we going to use the CDP for? What problems are we trying to solve? So in order for you to do this properly, I'm going to walk you through some of the main things to consider that are parts of this recipe, right? If we're looking at, this is the recipe, let's talk about the exact ingredients beyond just this general things. So the first one would be, wait for it, use cases. Obviously, you're not surprised. I hope you're not surprised. Anytime you're going to talk about, okay, the CDP or any technology, what is the use case that you're trying to solve for? But you might tell me, Jerry, I have a dozen use cases that I want to use for the CDP. Yes, but these use cases, in many cases, what I've seen are so general or so vague, I will put in. I want to have a better experience for my members on every channel. Great, that's a dream. We all want to do that. But what is every channel? What defines as a good experience? How do you measure that this is working? So my advice is, as you're putting together the use cases, I would say, one, generate a library of use cases. That's one. Then I would say prioritize. So give them your high, medium, low type of priority, and then expand on the high priority ones, the ones that you think are the most important. So when I say expand, this is where start thinking about, okay, what are the data points, or even what are the data sources that are needed? Now, why is this important? So probably you're asking the question, well, but isn't that the time when we are doing discovery with the CDP vendor? Yeah, of course. When you're select the CDP, you're going to go through discovery on figuring out the exact data points and such. But when you want to do the pricing for the CDP, one of the questions is going to be, well, how many data sources you're going to bring in? You're not going to be able to answer that question without knowing what are the use cases driving these data sources. So domino effect, start with the use cases, understand what are the data sources. Do I need my analytics data? Do I need my CRM? Do I need email? Do I need, I don't know, other data sources? Right? So figure out what are the things that are important for that use case. Other than that, concentrate on KPIs, right? How do you measure that this use case is performing? Along with that, of course, what are the objectives? Is the objective financial, or is it engagement? Whatever is the objective of this, maybe you want to increase the your member space, whatever that thing is. Think about what is the objective, and then what would be something we all kind of overlook is actually the gaps that you think we might run into. In a perfect scenario, you might say, or in an ideal world, you say, oh, I'm ready. I don't have any gaps. CDP comes in, I already have the data ready. I know what needs to be done, and we just need to light it up. I can bet money on it that it's not going to be the case. So it's no shame for you to figure out what are the gaps early on. If the gap is, hey, my analytics implementation is not the greatest. I have some data integrity issues, or the data in my CRM is going to require a good amount of transformation and ETL. Yeah, that's important, because if that's the case, you should know that early on, way before evaluating the CDP, because some CDPs allow or support ETL functionality. Some support limited, some do not. You got to bring the data as clean as it is, or too bad. So again, knowing what the gaps are helps you in knowing what to expect. So that's what comes to use cases. Spend the time, get the right people in the room to figure that out. And then from there, depending on how big you want the RFP to be, pick, I would say, 2 to 3 use cases that you include in the RFP. That will be a good way for you to utilize some of these use cases for the demos. So instead of having the vendors go wild with putting together a demo, which will be perfect, right? Because it's the vendors, you cannot blame them. They're going to come in and show you their best looking product. Instead, come up with your use case and just tell them, hey, in the demo, I want this. So again, another reason why this is really important for you to build these use cases. Let me see. I think I have a question. Yeah, we'll share these. We'll share the notes post in the recap. So don't worry. All of this you'll have access to a recording as well as the notes. Okay, so that's use cases. That's number one. Number two, we're going to talk about the understanding. It is no surprise, the technology, data, and the people. Okay, so what does that mean, and why is this important as you're prepping for an RFP? So let's talk about each of these separately. The technology itself, you know, in ideal world, you want the CDP is here, and let's say you're feeding the CRM data in here. You're bringing in your, let's say, it's just my erase will work. Let's say we are bringing, this is my web data, and then I'm also bringing in, this is my mobile, and then in the CDP, I'm connecting this into my, let's say, marketing automation. And I'm also connecting this back to the site for personalization. And then I'm also connecting it to the app, right? So there might be there might be different ways where this CDP will be fitting into your stack. But you want to know, well, what is important for the CRM? How does the CRM connect? Or from a web perspective, what are the criteria needed? Because the CDP is not going to be a magical product that is going to fit in within your technology. You want to see what is the best way for it to fit in. I'll give you examples of what you should be watching out for. So for example, if you have any real-time requirements, what does that mean? What is real-time? So understand, you know, do I need to have, for example, real-time being seconds that I need to feed in? Do I need to build APIs to support real-time? Is this immediate or this is a future requirement, right? So things like this, you start thinking, okay, well, this is my data that is within my technology. I want to get it to the CDP as quick as possible. So what would that look like? I'm going to give you a very concrete example on this topic itself. You might have a use case that in step one here, one of your use cases that says, I want to send or create an audience for people who bought a product in my store and have you know, visited the site. It's a very basic use case. And you want to send them an email immediately. The second that they finish their purchase on the site, finish the purchase in the store, and then you know that they've been to the site in the last 2 days, send them an email with some kind of promotion, or maybe a survey, right? Send them a survey. Okay, well, then in this case, if your technology is where the purchase data is in the store, doesn't become available for your CDP immediately, then you have a situation where the data load from the purchase into the CDP will have a time lag. So in this case, if this is going to go from your POS, point of sale, to your CRM on a nightly batch, and then from the CRM, load it to the CDP on the next day, and then in the CDP, migrated, ingested, and then qualify the segment, you're talking about like 72 hours. So that survey will take a while. So in that case, then you say, okay, well, is there a way for me to to streamline this? Can I have an API or a pipeline, a real-time pipeline into the CDP that purchases that are happening at the POS, I'm able to throw them on that pipeline, and then they will be ingested in the CDP within minutes or seconds. So that's where, from a technology, you start thinking, okay, what do I need to do? So important part as you're thinking about these things is that how much development might be needed for some of these use cases or for this solution. You might be the type of client that says, I really don't have time to do development. I want a CDP that is plug and play, as simple as it is. I don't have resources, I don't have the bandwidth or budget to do dev work, or I don't want that headache. I'm with you 100%, but know that before you do the RFP, because otherwise you might be signing up for something where there will be a gap. The related to technology is the data, right? So this is as important, and I completely ruined this. Let me see. Here we go. So data itself, understand like how much of your data can be used for the CDP. I'll give you an example. Some clients might think, hey, yes, my data is in a data lake. All I need to do is just pick what is needed, come up with the right cadence, and throw it on an S3 or on a shared cloud, and then ingest to the CDP. Well, but is that data like in the right format? One, is it in the right granularity? How often is that data being refreshed? Does it need to be refreshed, and what cadence in CDP? I wouldn't say you need to figure all that out before you do the RFP, but start thinking about that as you are putting together the RFP, so that if you find that there is gaps, it's what I would recommend, start that process in parallel to the RFP to do some in-house data assessment and planning. So when the RFP is done and you have a CDP and starting implementing, there's no surprises. There is no like delay in saying, wait, we need to redo our data model before we bring it to the CDP. That might be a problem. Now, the last piece of this is the people. Very surprising that it's least thought of is who are the people that are going to be involved, not in implementation, but in running the RFP from your side. Now, you might say, I want to go hire Softcrylic. Please do to help us run this RFP. Great, we would love to help you, but I'll be the first one to tell you, I cannot do this and promise you a successful CDP selection unless I have buy-in from you and your company. So my recommendation would be, there's few people that should be involved in the RFP process from your side, from a client. Have an architect, even if they are, whether they're data architect or enterprise architect, someone that understands data, understands the client internally, what is the reality of the data, whether it's amazing or it is not amazing. Someone should be there. Business owner. So this is the person that will need to be convinced that this use case is the right one. And as the vendors are demoing and answering these questions, that their answers live up to what their needs are. Definitely have, you need to have procurement, God bless them, part of this, because they will be going through a lot of negotiation and understanding what are the fine print around pricing and such, and how, given that each vendor have different pricing structure, And then it would be great, I find it, is to have a project manager. Sometimes you have, and I apologize for my misspelling. I don't have autocorrect on my tablet. They should upgrade that. Anyway, sometimes the procurement might be doing a lot of the PM work, but there will be a lot of coordination that needs to happen internally within your organization, but also externally with the vendors that you bring in. All right, so that's the second piece: technology, data, and people. The third piece. Oh, maybe I should. Okay. Yeah. So the third piece is inviting the right vendors. So this is, you might ask me, well, how do I know who are the right vendors? I mean, isn't that the idea of the RFP? Yes, of course. The idea of the RFP is for you to figure out who's the right fit, but you should have an idea of what kind of CDP you need walking into this. Because otherwise, sorry to break it to you, but there's, I don't know, hundreds, maybe thousands of CDPs. I don't even know. I can't keep track. And they're very different. Some are a tag manager that became a CDP, some that are a data warehouse that became a CDP, some marketing automation became a CDP, mobile vendor became a CDP. God, the list keeps going. So it's really hard to go through and just, you're not going to invite every CDP out there, not because you're wasting their time. You're going to have a hard time evaluating all their answers. So I would say 3 to 5 vendors tops. I would not go beyond that unless you really have a good case for that. But how to select what are the right vendors? A few things I would recommend. One, look at your existing stack. And for example, you might be a Salesforce shop. You have a Salesforce CRM. And you say, well, why would I go get another CDP? Can I look at Salesforce? I think that's a good option. I think it's good to consider. You also might be an Adobe shop. You have Adobe Analytics, Adobe Target, and you say, well, it makes more sense for us to look at Adobe. I would also consider them as one of the vendors. At the other side too, in addition to looking at your existing stack and seeing what complements your technology, also do a little research with Gartner and Forrester. Obviously, take it with a grain of salt, right? Those are, without getting myself in trouble, they have, it's not an idea they're biased or anything. It's just they have their own way of evaluating. It's not they're not evaluating on your behalf. So in that case, they have different criteria than what you have, but they're good directional. So you can get a sense of why some CDPs might be good versus not, and then that can help with that. And as you are evaluating, do some homework in terms of saying, like, okay, who are some of the clients that are using the CDP? So, for example, if you are in the financial services, you probably want to make sure that the CDP you're bringing in has history in financial services. Same thing if you're in healthcare. Healthcare is probably more crucial that the CDP you pick or invite to the RFP has some compliance, whether it's HIPAA or GDPR or CCPA, any of those amazing acronyms. So look at your vertical so I'll put it here, is vertical centric, and see if some CDPs might be a better fit based on what you do. If you're an e-commerce shop, you might be concentrating more on the web data. So a CDP that is a tag management might be a better fit. Yeah, so based on these criteria, pick a list of CDPs and then evaluate which of these might be the best fit, and try to keep it under 5 if you can. Otherwise, you're just gonna have a lot more material to go through. So that's the third piece. Okay. The fourth piece is scoring. Okay, so what do we mean by scoring? So again, the recipe, right? We talked about the recipe, that there is an RFP doc, there is a questionnaire. I always misspell this, so I don't know if this is the right spelling. But you're taking this and you're sending it to vendor 1, vendor 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then all of these, you're gonna have demos. And then you're gonna take all this information and evaluate. So how do you evaluate? This is, if you don't have a scoring system in place that you develop, that is critical and a reflection of your priority, then you're going to be lost, because the questionnaire itself might be somewhere between, I don't know, 50 to 100 questions, depending on how detailed you want. The demos might be somewhere between 2 to 3 hours. You multiply this by 5, you have a lot of information to go through. And my recommendation is, early on, as you are running the RFP, before you get any of the answers, prepare a scoring mechanism where you're able to assess what is important. You're also able to give weights to the different sections of the RFP, or not RFP, of the functionality that's important to you. Okay, so if we're talking about a CDP, let's talk about that. So what would be some of the important scoring things you want to look at? In my opinion, I always interested in, I want to look at data collection. How does this CDP does data collection with respect to my use cases and my needs and my company, etc. Right? Then, and you can say with data collection, it also includes ingestion, right? Which is key in terms of real-time support, the granularity, etc. The other piece is segmentation. So with segmentation, boy, that can be a big box. And segmentation is not an easy thing. It sounds easy because it's like, oh, I have this data point, and I say, if someone has this, then I create a segment. Yeah, but your segments are not going to be simple in a CDP. If it's going to be simple, then you can do the segmentation in-house and push that data into your activation channel. The idea of a CDP is that segmentation needs to be complex, or should get to a complex state. So make sure you're evaluating segmentation, whether it's from usability or the ability to do sequential segmentation, evaluation of the segments. What does that mean? So many times you might want the segment to evaluate as soon as the data is available. And then this evaluation, you can use it to take action. I'll give you an example. Again, let's take the idea of the store. So actually, let's sketch this. So I'm in the mood of drawing today. So let's say this is a store, and I came and I made a purchase. Okay, so this purchase event is sent to the CDP, and then based on that, there is a segment in the CDP that says purchasers. And then for anyone who is a purchaser, I want to send them send survey. Okay. So that's the use case, right? So let's say that the purchase event, this event, came to the CDP in real time. This is we were lucky to be able to do that, right? We have a real-time connection to do so. But then in the CDP, for this event to qualify, or to qualify this this member to be a purchaser in that segment, it really depends on how the segment does the evaluation. Sometimes this might take seconds to evaluate. Sometimes it takes minutes. Sometimes it might take a day, even that the data was loaded into it in real time. So that's important when you're doing scoring, is for you to understand that. So that there's no surprise when you're doing implementation. You say, yeah, I want to do the survey the second someone make a purchase. And they're like, yeah, but then you have a 24-hour delay. You're like, that's not what I signed up for. So make sure you're evaluating that, and then you're scoring based on it and putting the weights. It might based on your use cases. I mean, for some, it might be, it has a big weight, saying like, 20% of my score is going to be based on segmentation. Some of them might say, I don't care. I just want to be able to bring my data into a single repository. So this is where the weights will play a role. And then the final piece for evaluation will not be starting with an E. Instead, it would be activation. Obviously, these are not the only three areas, but there's also security, there's also implementation, pricing. I'm not going to give you all my secrets today, but I'm giving you the general ones. Activation is critical here, meaning what are the native integrations? Let me fill you in on a secret. And vendors don't like when I say that, but even when you are an enterprise solution that has analytics and marketing automation and a CDP, sometimes the integration between those solutions, unfortunately, are not native. They might look native, but they're not, or they might have some limitations. Make sure you consider that when you're doing the scoring. Especially, we see this a lot happening between a CDP and a marketing automation, right? Because marketing automation is what does a lot of the end. It's that last mile. The CDP is segmenting, and some of them orchestrate, some of them don't. You're pushing that segment of this audience to the next engine, and the engine now is saying, okay, I'm going to send the email, I'm going to push the notification, I'm going to send this to the direct mail. So that integration will be critical. Also, if you're in a situation where you're trying to have your CDP replace your DMP and do the CDP, then also in your activation, make sure you consider what kind of ad or programmatic integration there is, and also how do they work? Sometimes the CDPs are using the DMP behind the doors or behind under the hood to do some of this integration, which is fine, but then you will be running into match rate issues. So if you're trying to integrate your CDP with, let's say, a trade desk or Google, could there be an option where you can use your own PII information, right? A hashed version of the email or a universal ID that that particular destination has with your CDP integrate with it. So things to consider. Okay, so that's scoring. All right, and then let's get into the one before last piece is pricing. So yes, pricing is critical, very critical, and your procurement will handle a lot of that in negotiation. But procurement also does not know what a CDP is. Right? That's not their job. They don't know how to price a CDP. So one of the things you want to do is figure out how much data, and in some cases profiles, need to exist in CDP. And if you're trying to negotiate a multi-year, think about what is year 1 versus year 5, if you're doing a 5-year, or maybe year 3. So when I say profiles, it wouldn't be only your known profile. So that is, make sure your profiles are both your known and anonymous, especially if you're bringing mobile data with a device ID, or you're bringing in your web data. This is a tricky one, because you might say, today I have 3 million, or let's say I have 5 million members in my system, and this is what I'm going to do for year 1, and then I'm projecting year 2 will be 6 million, year 3 7 million, year 5 10 million. Yeah, but those are members. What about your anonymous data? Who's coming to your site? How many monthly? How many device IDs are coming to your site? If you're trying to bring this data and stitch it, don't forget there is situations where, in many cases, I hear a lot of these use cases. I want to know how an anonymous became known. What are the steps? What are the touch points that got them from an anonymous to known? For that, you need to bring that data into the CDP, and it will count, and it will be important for pricing. So give your procurement some love, spend some time with them, clarify what you need, do your homework in identifying that, and then this will help you in a negotiation as well as setting the right expectations. So that will be an important piece. All right, I see that there is another question. Let's see. And is the way CDPs do visitor stitching something that requires special evaluation? Are there a lot of difference? Example, multiple IDs allowed, historical back stitching versus forward stitching between vendors? Yes, Lucas, very, very good question. One of the things that I did not include here is identity. But that should be one of the things that I would recommend you evaluate. Evaluate on how identity, to what extent you can set identity within the CDP. And this is where, are they able to do multiple IDs? Are they able to do how back stitching? Is there the rules of stitching? You might have different scenarios, right? You're getting data from multiple sources. You might want to stitch based on a complex if and else statement. CDPs might not be able to fulfill that need. And that is okay. But you should know that so that if there is identity requirements and stitching that is crucial for your business that the CDP cannot fully do, then you can prepare internally within your organization, where end of the day, we'll talk about that in a different session, but end of the day, you own the data. It should exist in your ecosystem in addition to the CDP. But in there, this is where you might manage identity. So what might happen if we're talking about identity, you might have, let's say, this is a lake, data lake, data going into the CDP, and then the CDP is feeding into your marketing automation and into Facebook and such. What could happen, part of this, is that your marketing automation information feeds back into the CDP so that you're stitching, okay, this is the segment and how did they perform? Who did we communicate with? What did they do? Did they open? Did they click? Did they purchase? And then let's say here also, this is your analytics data. So then what you want to do is this should be coming back into the data lake to a certain extent, some of it. This can be stitched profile info plus events that doesn't exist. And then you might want to do some cleansing and maybe more stitching, or what we would call identity cleansing and resolution, and then feedback to the CDP on a regular basis. That would be something you should be evaluating during the RFP process to see how much homework needs to happen internally as you bring the CDP in. Great question. Okay. Now, the last topic, part of the selection is actually selection. So selection is where, in addition to doing the answers and then a demo and then POC, and we're going to talk about a POC. So POC, just proof of concept. It's not your point of contact. Acronyms these days are running wild. Okay, so obviously this is where scoring is very important, but very commonly you will be concentrating on these two, the answers and the demo. Again, I would recommend that the demo itself, you define what the demo criteria is, choose a use case that you have defined, and ask the vendors to demo it. This will help you in comparing apples to apples. You know, the same thing, same story, different vendor, rather than a completely different demo by the vendors, so that now you're confused comparing oranges and apples. Anyway, so this is where the common you will see. Sometimes you want to do a proof of concept. Bit of news, not every vendor will be willing to do a free proof of concept, and they're not wrong. It takes a lot of time on their side, resources, investment, also showing their cards before there's a commitment to a contract. You know, they have their reasons, can't blame them, but you should evaluate how important it is for you to do a POC. And if you're going to do a POC, do not do it on 3 to 5 vendors. I would keep the POC as last resort. If you come down to 2 vendors and you're like, man, they're good, I really like what I'm seeing, but I don't know how real this is. Like, I want to see this in action. Is there a way where we can get into the product? Can we give you some data? So I would say, if you're gonna do a POC, you know, don't run it for more than 30 days. Make it simple, you know, as simple as possible, so that And when I say simple, it's not because the vendors cannot do this. It's because how much this is going to put weight on you and your organization. So for example, if you're saying, okay, I'm going to give you some data from my CRM, like, okay, but don't give them like a table with like 25 and 30 attributes and then spend time doing cleanup and figuring out the storage and all that stuff. Like, you're going to waste time. Give them something as basic as it is. Just figure out what is important that you want to be part of the demo. If data collection is not a critical piece for you, and instead you want to see how data can be used within the platform, then just give them a flat file. Upload the flat file. Or if you want to test their API, tell them, I want to see how we can leverage your API to load this data into your system. So be very concise in that. So simplify it, and then include the right people. So have the people who eventually will be who will be using the CDP or part of the implementation be within or be included in this POC. That will make your process much simpler. Okay. So this is all I got for you. It's kind of weird that I've just been talking and talking for the past 50 some minutes. I hope you guys gained something from this. Again, this is our first in multiple parts. So again, we talked today about the process selection. Next week, next Thursday, this time, we'll talk about the assessment need for a CDP. We'll have a guest along with us, and it will be a fun one. Before we go, there's another email from Luke, another question from Lucas. Doesn't keeping the POC simple increase the risk that real issues won't surface till later? 100%. I mean, it's not. I mean, the POC itself should concentrate on the things that you have doubts about. That's why, yes, keep it simple so it's not taking forever to run the POC, but don't make it simple where it's like it's too simple to the fact that you're not answering the doubts that you have. So choose. That's why I said choose what's critical for you. If your doubts are about the segmentation, then get the process of getting data in easy, and spend more time in the segmentation, right? Of saying, how quick does segment qualify? How quick does segment map to the activation? If someone qualifies for the segment, how quick would it show up in the other system? If someone is out of the segment, how quick would they be removed from the other destination? If your doubts are in terms of how quick data will be brought into the CDP, then I would concentrate on that piece. Select simpler data points from your, I'm saying a lot of CRM, but it doesn't have to be a CRM, whatever that system is, and just say, okay, how quick did that mapping look like? So just don't let the POC run for 90 days, right? Like that would be, usually an RFP would take somewhere between 4 to 6 months. And if you add another 90 days of a POC on top of it, then you're running into a 9 months negotiation and starting. So from the beginning, like you have a year before you start getting value of the CDP. That's a long time. So shrink that down, be concise with what is important for you to evaluate. And if you find yourself, you get to the POC level and you're still have a lot of doubts on how this works, I would re-question, are we ready for a CDP? And that would be the topic for the next next webinar. But that would be my recommendation. All right, and then let's see. All right, thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. That's all for now, guys. I hope. Hey, there was a question. Someone raised their hands. I don't know if you Sammy, can people like chime in with audio or?
Yep, so they can raise their hand, or if you want to talk, I can allow you, or Jerry can allow you to talk if you look at the attendees list, Jerry.
Yes, let me see. Someone raised their hand. I have no idea who was it. I saw it, then it went away. All right, well, if I missed your question, I'm sorry, but you can always reach to us with any follow-up questions. This will be posted on our website along with a link to the recording, and then we'll have details around the second webinar and the other series. So thank you again. Thank you, Sammy, for organizing this, and talk to you guys soon.